Antarctica is not a place that's written on everyone's bucket list of places to travel to, but it surely has its fair share of mysteries that we humans have been unraveling of late. If you're wondering which of these mysteries have been unraveled recently, well, it's a hidden world with extraordinary marine life forms in it that was discovered in a river that flows under the ice of Antarctica. Stay tuned to find out more about this. Hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. This secret marine ecosystem that was discovered under Antarctica is located at a depth of 1,600 miles below sea level. If we're to be even more precise about its location, it is right in the middle of Filchner-Ronne ice shelf, which is located around 5 hours away from Antarctica by flight. Geologist James Smith visited this location when Antarctica was experiencing its southern summer, and here he stayed for around 3 months, where he had to live in harshly cold temperatures, where he only had a tent for shelter and dehydrated food to provide him with energy. Studying a floating shelf is not easy. This is because studying one requires seafloor sediment that's present under half a mile of ice. In order to reach it, the geologist and his team had to melt around 20 tons of ice, creating 20,000 liters of water, which they pumped through a pipe that was placed in a borehole. It took the geologist and his team around 20 hours to conduct this operation. They did all of this quite carefully, and even the melting of ice was done 1 inch at a time. Finally, they were able to pierce through the shelf and reach their desired location. Once this was done, they collected the sediment with their professional equipment and also attached a GoPro camera to capture footage. No sediment was derived, but on looking at the footage, it was noticed that the bluish-green ice opened up into darkness after a descent of 3,000 feet. The GoPro camera showed footage for another 1,600 feet until the seafloor was observed and some sort of life was detected. Smith's colleague, Hugh Griffiths, who worked at the British Antarctic Survey, watched the film and noticed a thin layer that was formed on a rock. This layer was anticipated to be a layer of bacteria that formed a microbial mat. A weird-shaped sponge as well as a few living creatures with stalks were attached to the surface of the rock. A cylindrical sponge-like structure was also noticed growing on the surface of the rock. In addition to this, a series of wispy filaments was also seen growing on the rock. This was assumed to be a hydroid. The rock in which all these various life forms were discovered was in fact 160 miles away from sunlight. In simple terms, it is located near the edge of the shelf, where the ice opens into the sea. If we're to further analyze this spot, it is located hundreds of miles away from any source of food. This spot may get some sunlight, enough to keep an ecosystem running, allowing the various life forms that are part of the ecosystem to sustain itself. What we know so far is that these organisms are living in complete darkness, and this is not completely abnormal, as quite a few organisms live amidst the dark depths of our ocean. But the organisms found at this depth are known to have sessile existence, and it's mandatory for them to have a steady supply of food to sustain themselves. This food is mostly provided to them in the form of marine snow. It is a well-known fact that every living thing does not live an immortal life, and that it does cease to exist someday. So the living creatures that live on the higher levels of the water body eventually die and their dead bodies descend into the depths of the ocean. Here, amidst these depths, their corpses decompose. During this decomposition process, they pose as a suitable source of food for those organisms that thrive in these deep and dark depths. The creatures that live at these depths pick on these dead corpses until they become tiny morsels that can be easily consumed. These tiny morsels form a layer on the seafloor after they settle down. This is quite similar to a whale fall, which is when a whale dies and its corpse sinks to the bottom of the ocean. This is exactly what happens in the water surrounding Antarctica. In these water bodies, one can find plenty of plankton, which help keep all the fish in the water fed. These in turn feed larger sea creatures such as seals. All these activities that take place in these water bodies produce detritus that turn into marine snow. If you're wondering what detritus is, well, it's the dead animals used to thrive in these waters. It's important to note that the creatures that are found in the water bodies surrounding Antarctica live under solid ice that expands for around half a mile. This means that they cannot move away from their location to go in search of food. Food sources are sporadic, and many were left to wonder how these organisms were able to sustain themselves. After conducting some intense research, researchers came to the conclusion that the marine snow drifts until it's flipped on its side. This means that the food source does not move vertically but horizontally. If one takes a look at the data collected with regard to the currents near the drill site, there have been productive regions detected around 390 and 930 miles away. Though this may not seem like much, these currents hold enough food to feed the creatures that thrive in these dark depths. The deepest part of that ocean is said to be the Challenger Deep near Guam. Here, One can find the marine snow that's produced here descending 7 miles before reaching the ocean floor. And in order to reach the organisms on the rock that we were talking about earlier, it would have to cover around 133 times this distance, and it would do so by floating horizontally. According to Rich Mui, curator of invertebrate zoology and geology at the California Academy of Sciences, as the seawater cools, it grows denser. He further added, it sinks to the sea bottom and pushes water outward, radiating outward from the Antarctic. And these currents are actually the germ of many, if not almost all of, the current systems on the planet. There's going to be some inflow to replace that. And that inflow, even over hundreds of kilometers, is going to carry organic matter. In short, the currents that pass through this region could bring about an increase in the population of life on the rock. Unfortunately, researchers have not been able to collect specimens from this rock. The team also cannot say yet if fish, crustaceans, and similar creatures live on the rock, so we can't say for sure if these creatures face any sort of predation. Griffiths further questioned his theory by wondering if some of these organisms, if not all, secure nutrients from each other, something that could be compared to a symbiotic relationship. But this question is still left unanswered as there isn't enough evidence to prove it. However, we do know that the sedimentation that has formed around the rock is light and is not in danger of being buried in sediment. Speaking of sediments, on observing the sediments that surround the rock, it was noticed that there are ripples formed by the currents that pass through this region. This has created a theory where it's predicted that the food comes floating in from a far-off source. But how did these sessile creatures get here in the first place is the big question that scientists have been trying to answer. Many scientists have hypothesized that the creatures may have moved from surface to surface or rock to rock to attain the position that they're currently located at now. Some other scientists have hypothesized that the sperm and eggs from organisms living far away may have traveled with the aid of the current, only to start life on a faraway rock. Another hypothesis that was drawn out by scientists was that this could be an ancient ecosystem that has Antarctic sponges present in them. But we're not sure about this yet. The ocean is vast and quite a few such ecosystems thrive in this environment. The floating shelves of ice that we mentioned earlier expand for around 560,000 square miles, hence giving enough space for various ecosystems to thrive. Only thing is that we have not found them yet. We live in terms where global warming is quite prevalent. Thus, it is very important to ensure that scientists and we as human race get more details on these life forms before the ice sheets melt, erasing any evidence of life forms. What are your thoughts on this secret marine ecosystem that was recently found? Do bless the comment section with your thoughts. We hope you had a great time watching our video today, and we can't wait to have you back on our channel real soon. Before you go, do drop this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon to be in the loop on what's happening on this channel. See you soon!